Hey guys, how's it going? Okay, I ran across a really delightful game of chess with Anna Cramling. She was in Madrid, Spain. She was just out there at a local park, and Magnus Carlsen shows up and starts playing chess in this park. So she asks him if she could play him. And he goes, "Oh, yeah, yeah, sit down, sit down." So it was a very, very fun, very interesting game. And I want to show you this game. Magnus was playing white, Cramling was playing black. And I will leave a link down to that game in the description because they're kind of chit-chatting with each other and sort of interacting with the crowd around them and just having a good time. And so this is fun. So let's see what Magnus does. He opens with the queen pawn, of course, and then, yes, he's going to do the very famous queen opening. And now knight f3 and d5. So she very properly makes sure that she doesn't just get unopposed pawns in the center. And this is always good. Magnus is going to fianchetto, and she immediately goes check. Bishop b4 check to the king. Knight will come up to c3 blocking. D is going to take c4. And that this is all just pretty much book at this point. That's not a big deal. And then the fianchetto, and now she does something. Now, listen, these two are so far out of my league, I couldn't possibly even compete with them. I'm aware of that. It's kind of intimidating to give a critique of either one of them. But the knight to d5, she needs to be developing her pieces rather than going on some kind of an excursion over here that she can't possibly win against the world's #1, if not all-time chess history player, Magnus Carlsen. This just is not going to work. And Magnus, I gotta take my glasses off so I can read this. And Magnus shows why. First, he's going to take off the pin. Now, the idea of the pin is perfectly legit. That's fine. It's this second and third and fourth moves with the same piece in the opening with a center that is not closed. That is honestly questionable. Now, I would have been so overwhelmed playing either one of these guys that I probably wouldn't have played my best chess either. But this is not Anna Cramling's best effort, but they're having fun. That's the point. It is a casual game. It's a joy and a pleasure to watch it. They had fun. I'm jealous. I'd love to play either one of them. But yeah. So bishop d2, she goes ahead and castles. And Carlsen will castle as well. So we're done with the castling, and now c6. So again, she's trying to solidify her center. The knight is well placed, but it's not permanent because you can come up here and bump the knight out. And in fact, speaking of which, that is exactly what Carlsen does do. And so now here she does play appropriately. You can't, of course, this square is off limits, and technically so is this one, and technically so is this one, because she can't take her own bishop. So, but to retreat simply does no good at all. So she does exchange. Now that's appropriate. Yeah, right. But that is the third knight move. And what it also does is it takes one of her developed pieces out of the field, and he's got 3 pieces plus a potential rook in a castle position that he can bump the pawn up and open up. And she only has 1. And the world champion has 3. This does not bode well. And it's because she's been monkeying around with just the one piece. I just want to point that out. That was the First immediate thing that popped out in my mind. And now she has to retreat all the way back to E7. So now A4, and then she goes A5. She puts a stop to the queen side. He puts the queen to the B1. Now, this is a half open file. And technically, queens don't belong in open files, but man, can they control them. The rooks are better, but this queen is doing a fantastic job. So she's going to bring her knight out on the edge of the board. She won't leave it there, but she brings it out on the edge of the board. And now Carlsen pops his knight on an outpost in a very excellent central location. It's so good that Cramling says, no, I can't let you leave it there. But that wasn't his intent. And his intent was not to attack the king side. He wanted to get rid of that pawn. At this point, let's see what she does. E5. Okay. At this point, what I'm seeing is her pieces are just simply less active and less developed than Carlsen's, the counter pieces. His knight is much better than hers. Both of his bishops are much better than hers. In fact, she hasn't even moved her bishop, her queen, or her rook. And he has moved every piece except his rook, but that's doing the job on the file. So this is very interesting. It's not looking good for her if she doesn't hurry and develop. Here she comes. Okay, bishop e6. Good. Here comes another piece. And the black bishop, of course, is her bad bishop. This French sort of defense position with the bishops keeps his bishop in at this point. They leave the tension. So her bishops are not as active as his at this point, but things change. And so knight b6. And this is the other thing that Carlsen is so masterful at looking for, the backward pawn, which of course means there's a hole right there. The pawns have moved forward. So this is a backward pawn. That's a weakness. Now, since they've moved from here and here, the dark squares, these especially, are weak. And so that's a perfect place to pop a piece in. And we see Carlsen do that. She'll bring her rook to b8. He comes forward. It'll gain him space. This makes perfect sense. d5 gaining space. Rather than opening up here, he's going to open it up over here. C will take the d5. And E will take the d5. Now they're beginning to get some open lanes for the rooks, which is a good thing. Bishop comes back to f7 because of the pawn push. And sure enough, rook to d1, getting behind the passed pawn. There's a passed pawn here. Now, and of course, rooks belong behind passed pawns. So soon, if not right now, that becomes the most important piece in the game. And that's usually how to treat a passed pawn. So what do you do if you have a passed pawn? You put your rook behind it and bump it all the way in. What do you do if you're playing against a passed pawn? Cramling shows us beautifully what to do. Blockade it. Fine. Done. Stop. Halten Sie, Signore. You go no further. You are trespassing. Yes. Watch what Carlsen does. What would you do in this instance? Knight c4. Okay, see, it's okay here, but it's not doing a lot right. I mean, it did its job. It moved the rook to b. It's not making any threats, really. Yeah, it's deep in the territory, but here it performs a much better function. It attacks the blockader of his passed pawn. Superb move. And Cramling says, well, I'm going to bring my knight to c5 here. So let's see what happens. Sure enough, he exchanges the blockader. Now, This is a kind of an interesting piece of psychology here that he gives her. The bishop, and of course, ideally, the knight is by far the best blockader of passed pawns because it has such a powerful surrounding. It can still attack on other colors, even. A bishop is a good blockader. A rook can be a real good blockader. A queen is not a good blockader. And the reason why is because her value is so high that the queen is always a target, right? And so if you really do need to stop the pawn, the queen's not the way to do it. So Carlsen forces her to swap the bishop with the queen. So this is going to be an interesting thing to see how he manipulates this. Queen b5, here we go. Get the queen involved. Notice she's doing okay here, but what Carlsen appears to me to be doing is putting all of his pieces on the best possible squares for maximum power, maximum activity. This is an offensive queen. She's on offense. She's hitting the pawn. She's hitting the knight. She's keeping her eye on that pawn, and she has forced the rook to defensive babysitting of a pawn, which really makes that rook weak compared to that rook who is supporting the passed pawn. And actually, this rook isn't doing a lot, so Carlsen needs to get this rook involved too. But her queen is vastly superior to her queen, which is also a defensive piece at this point. So this is a very interesting comparison contrast. Rook f to c8. Here she comes. Okay, so she's going to give us a very, very good pair of rooks. Let's see how they work it. Rook a to b1, backing the queen. Here we go. And it's not necessary to hit that either. It's not because he's going to use the queen as the battery. No, but putting the rook on the open file, the partial open file, allows this queen to move around better, to attack more pieces. And bishop will come to e8. So the bishop here is keeping the eye on the passed pawn while it's blockaded. She can't yet take it because the rook has it protected. And so she's going to relocate her bishop, hitting the target of the queen because that is such a superb place for the queen. So the queen just simply takes the pawn. And the knight will take the pawn. A very nice coordination with the bishop and the knight. So the board is opening up. Rook d to c1. And now b6. Touch the queen again. And queen will come down to b4. Watch what Carlsen is doing. So we're approaching the end of the middle game, more or less. Lots of pieces can be exchanged fairly fast because the board is somewhat open. There's not locked pawn structures. There's not great big long pawn chains. So the board is basically open. It is easier to push a passed pawn in with less pieces on the board. So this makes sense that Carlsen is now going to try to exchange some pieces. If you have a passed pawn, you want to get rid of some pieces. Ideally, really sincerely, ideally, get rid of the queen and the rooks. So we see this is what Carlsen appears to us to be doing. And of course, she will take it. Queen takes, pawn takes, knight will come to c3. Rook has to bump up to b2. Bishop will come to a4. And Carlsen pushes the h4 pawn way over here. She responds with the side thrust by pushing in the center, the e4. Very good strategy. And now the bishop to f4. hitting the rook. And the rook goes to A8. And it is here, I just want to mention this, and this is one of the humorous parts in her video. You'll really enjoy watching this. She's when he does this, and she goes, and they're kind of giggling and laughing, and he goes, tactics, 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 look for tactics. And so she takes a few moments and she's looking around. She's going, yeah, oh, wow. Wow, yeah, what tactics, what tactics? And she couldn't find any. So she moved the rook to A8. And then he said, oh, you're not going to continue looking for tactics. And so he said the tactic he had in mind. It's interesting that he was trying to give her a hint. And earlier on in the game, he said, no, you're playing too good for me. I don't like this. It was a great compliment to her, you know. But the tactic he mentioned, and he did point this out in the video, is the knight takes the pawn. Because you're attacking the bishop and you're attacking the rook. So there's going to be a piece lost, or at least exchanged, right? So that was the tactic that he was talking about. She didn't see it, so she moves the rook to A8. And now he is properly pushing the pawn. Absolutely pushing the pawn. And nothing is attacking it, and yet he is supporting it, right? So the knight comes to D1. And it was interesting. He goes, oh, ho, ho. And he immediately again, notice his strategy. He's exchanging the heavy pieces. He's exchanged the queens. He sees an opportunity and he goes, oh, hey, yeah. Let's get rid of the rooks, because it does help to push that passed pawn. So this is not helping her, it's helping him. And now he goes to rook D2, attacking her knight and pushing his pawn through, right? So she will come to rook C1. Very cool move. And of course, there's going to be a discovered check on the king, her next move. So that was a clever attempt at a tactic. It was a good try. It really was. He was too quick for it. He said, oh, yeah. No. I'm going to put the king there. Yeah. And now the bishop comes back to D7 to keep the king corralled. Maybe there's something in the back she can do. Unlikely, but it's a good try. So now his bishop will take E4, and his bishops, once again, just to know this as a mental note to put in all our brains, his centralized bishops are just raking over the entire board. Now, of course, he has the bishop pair, and he's putting them right where they belong in more or less an open board. There's nothing in the center, really. So those are the two most powerful pieces. They're more active than her minor pieces. And at one point in the game, she was complaining. She said, well, I don't want to leave my rook down there. And she was trying to move it. And she said, well, I've got to do this first and all that. And he immediately retorted. He said, oh, well, your knight is way worse than your rook, because it was on the rim and she had left it there for a while. So weak pieces in comparison to his much more centralized pieces. That's the essence of this game. It's very interesting. Fun for us to see how he played this. And now she is going to challenge the bishop, F5, a good challenge. And now bishop comes to D5 check. So the king has to come to F8. And the other bishop comes to G5. And she goes to H6. She's going to challenge the bishop. And the bishop comes to E7. So a superb use of the passed pawn. Not only that, though, is the support of the passed pawn. not only with the rook, but with the bishops getting an attack on the king. This is a superb illustration of how to value a passed pawn. It is absolutely the most important piece on the chessboard. So she'll move out of check, king to e8, and now rook will come to a2. He's going to bring his rook up and over. So he's got the pawn protected. His rook is no longer doing the job he needs it to. These two pieces are somewhat way out of play. Now it's time for him to come up into here. So he goes rook a2, and she spots that, and she immediately brings the rook back to c8. Excellent move. And now the bishop to f3. He's coming back. She brings the knight up to c3. She realizes, I've got to get this knight back into this game real quick. And now bishop h5 check. And g6. And finally, the demise. That was the last play she had. Checkmate to the king. So fun game. I'll leave the description, the link in the description. The essence of this game that I saw is, number one, the very first was the development and the mobility. The actual activity of Carlsen's pieces were just better, truly. And each of his counter pieces, his bishops compared to hers, his knights compared to hers, his queen and rooks compared to hers, each time during the game, when you compared the two, his were always more active, more forceful, more centralized. So that's an important takeaway for us as we play our games. And then the passed pawn and the way he simply converted his entire game, the rooks and the bishops, around that passed pawn, no matter what. That was the piece to protect. So that's another really cool lesson for this game. So have fun watching this game. The fun stuff. And Anna Cramling, she has a wonderful website. She's spectacular too. Fun to watch. She's a beautiful little gal. Magnus Carlsen, you can't praise him enough. He is the king of the universe in this fantastic game of ours. So every game of his is worth exploring and looking at. It is positively insane how good he is at playing chess. And I have every intention of sharing lots more of his games with you. So, all right, you guys, thanks for watching. Appreciate your support. Have fun, be good, do well, make lots of friends. And I will see you in the next Backyard Professor Chess video coming up shortly. Hey, it's almost Christmas. Get your shopping done. Yeah, we're going to do some Christmas chess too. See you soon.